You are listening to On the Pond with your host, Adam Steer.
How's it going, everyone? Want to welcome you all back to the 5th episode of On the Pond. I'm your host, Adam Steer. Now, it's been a long time since I've created a video for you guys. I was on vacation for about a month. I went to Israel and Greece. I met so many amazing people, had some unbelievable experiences. I absolutely loved everything about the trip. However, I am now back, and I know it is time to create another video. There have been some moves that have gone on in the NHL over the last little while, and I want to discuss them. So let's get right into the swing of things here and cut to the chase. The Buffalo Sabres have re-signed 40-goal scorer, now you can say, Jeff Skinner, to an 8-year deal worth $72 million with an AAV of $9 million. Now, realistically, let's be honest here, it's an overpayment. But you know what? If I'm a Buffalo Sabres fan, you got to be happy with this signing because you knew the Sabres had to re-sign Jeff Skinner. Buffalo had a lot of ups, especially at the beginning of the year, but a lot of downs in the second half of the season. But Jeff Skinner was one of the bright spots of their lineup. He was one of the players that was creating scoring chances, generating offense, and you have to keep guys like this on the roster. Now, I know it's a bit of an overpayment. I know realistically he probably could have gotten similar to $9 million on the open market, but Buffalo realized that they don't have much offense. They really do not have a ton of other offensive guys, and if they lost Skinner, what direction would the team be going in? You got Dahlin, you traded for Brandon Montour, you had to re-sign Jeff Skinner. Now, I know it was a bit of an overpayment, but that's fine because they had to make the move. And you know what? Realistically, if they didn't re-sign Jeff Skinner and they were looking at free agency, they're not going to be able to replace the goal-scoring ability of Skinner for that price. There's not really anybody else on the market that can score the way Jeff Skinner can. You look at guys like Artemi Panarin, but Panarin's going to get $11 million in free agency just because on the open market, teams are willing to overpay as they always do, right? So overall, I really do like the Skinner signing for Buffalo. I don't love the 8 years, but realistically, at the end of the day, if Buffalo wants to make progress with their team and take that big step forward, they gotta start signing big names like Jeff Skinner in their lineup. And I think you're starting to see them starting to try to form their team. You have your core forwards, you have Eichel, you have Skinner, you have Reinhart. The key for the Buffalo Sabres is if they can hit on their draft picks. They have Casey Middlestat, who they drafted 8th overall in 2017. What's he going to be? You have Alex Nylander, who was 8th overall in 2016. What's he going to be? Both players show signs that maybe at some small points last year, maybe they could become something, but honestly, I don't know yet. I said for the Buffalo Sabres, the worst thing they did for the franchise was trade Ryan O'Reilly. Now, I know there were a bunch of issues going on with Cap and, him in the locker room, and they kind of had to move him because he was kind of with Buffalo for a few years there for a while, and they kind of had to do it, but I think they really need to lock down the middle ice position because you have Eichel, and then after that, it's just a bunch of question marks. You have Middlestat, you have Tage Thompson, you have Sabatka. You don't really know what you have in the middle of the ice. You have Sam Reiner, who's probably better suited as a winger, in my opinion, and I think he showed last year that he thrives better as a winger. But what do you do with Sam Reiner? Do you plug him in the middle? And then you have other guys like Okposo there. I'm really happy Buffalo signed Jeff Skinner. I think they had to make this move. And, Buffalo's starting to add some pieces to their team, and maybe in the next couple of years they'll be competitive. They do have the 7th overall pick in the draft. I think they're going to draft the forward, in my opinion. They're going to get someone that's highly skilled who can generate offense. So we'll see who they pick there. So overall, a little bit of an overpayment for the Buffalo Sabres, but I think they kind of had to make the move. Again, you look at the production of other guys in free agency, you can't really match that to the price level of Skinner. He's familiar. He's played a year with Jack Eichel. They developed chemistry. Pretty good job overall from Jason Botterill. I give him credit on that for getting it done. And I give credit to Jeff Skinner's agent for getting $9 million. That's insane. That's really going to change the market, in my opinion. A lot of these RFAs are probably laughing in their sleep at the fact that Jeff Skinner got 63 points and is making $9 million. Anyways, good signing for Buffalo. Moving on. The Philadelphia Flyers have acquired the rights to Kevin Hayes from the Winnipeg Jets in exchange for a 5th-round draft pick. So they do not have Kevin Hayes on the roster next year guaranteed. They have his rights, meaning that they didn't want to risk waiting until July 1st to get a deal done. They wanted to sign him now and try to start working out a deal now and then when the free agent period starts, which I believe is June 26th, they can start talking to teams. So I think we might see a Kevin Hayes contract then. I doubt that Kevin Hayes is going to re-sign somewhere other than Philadelphia. I mean, usually when teams trade for the rights of a player, they're probably close to a deal or maybe have an idea for what kind of deal they want. Now, if you're a hockey fan, if you say this is a bad deal for the Winnipeg Jets, you clearly don't know much about hockey in the grand scheme of things, because Winnipeg was going to lose this guy for nothing. And basically they're saying to Philly, here, you want him, but we'll give you a 5th-round pick. So at least they're getting some form of asset in exchange for a player that they were going to lose for nothing. So you're basically getting a free 5th-round pick. Now, I know they gave up the first for Kevin Hayes, but you know what? The trade was lost, not today. The trade was lost when they lost to the Blues in 6 games. That's when they lost the trade. But you know what? That's fine, because at least they got something now, and I think Winnipeg is going to, be a contender next year in the Western Conference. Now, I like the move for Philly, but overall, I don't think there's a fair way to assess this trade until after Kevin Hayes signs a deal, because Kevin Hayes could, they could basically get a free Kevin Hayes in exchange, basically, for a 5th-round pick. But what's the deal going to be? When you look at Kevin Hayes, he's a big guy, 6'6", massive. He's a defensive center. He can create some offense. He had a solid stint with the Jets. I know people said Kevin Hayes wasn't that good. He was okay in the playoffs. He kind of got shafted a bit there. He just kind of didn't really fit in the way Paul Stastny did kind of right away with Winnipeg when they went on their run to the conference finals. But what's Kevin Hayes' contract going to look like? Now, you assume in Philly, you have Sean Couturier as your number 1 center. You have Kevin Hayes as your number 2 center. And I assume Nolan Patrick's going to be their number 3 center for now. I think Nolan Patrick as their 3rd-line center for now is going to be great for his development. I think that's what they should have done all along. Like Casey Middlestat, I don't think it was fair to just throw Nolan Patrick in at 2nd-line center. I think you got to nurture him a little bit. Even though he was a 2nd overall pick, you can't give him all the big minutes right away. Let him start to develop a bit. Philly does have some of the guys. But again, what's the contract of Kevin Hayes going to look like? Now, personally, I think anything over $6 million is a bit of an overpayment, in my opinion. Kevin Hayes, yes, he did put up 55 points this year, but in a full season with one team, with the Rangers, he's never been able to put up 50 points. And yes, you can say they had all those great teams back then, and he didn't get much time in the lineup. He's 27 years old. He's in the prime of his career. This could be a case of, again, that 27-year-old signing that 8-year deal. The big power forward center that sort of regresses quickly because of his type of play. This could be a concern for teams if you're signing Kevin Hayes to an 8-year deal. Personally, I think a 4 or 5-year deal would make sense for Kevin Hayes, and around the $5 to $5.5 million range, I think is very fair for Kevin Hayes. I think he's a perennial 50-point guy, defensive. He's like that Ryan O'Reilly-esque type guy. He can come in, win some faceoffs, play some key minutes defensively. But overall, I don't think you can totally assess the Kevin Hayes trade to Philly until he actually signs the contract, because Kevin Hayes at $7 million doesn't look like a good deal for Philly versus Kevin Hayes at $5.55 million. I think would be better. Moving on now. Sorry. There are a lot of rumors going around about Phil Kessel and the Minnesota Wild. Now, for those of you who may know, Pittsburgh had a deal in place to send Phil Kessel to Minnesota. Jason Zucker was one of the pieces coming back, and there were some other interchangeable pieces moving from Pittsburgh and Minnesota. But Phil Kessel vetoed the trade, basically. He said that Minnesota does not have a competing team. And honestly, I agree with Kessel. When you look at the Central Division in the Western Conference, that's the most competitive division in the NHL. You have St. Louis, who's in the Cup final right now. You have Winnipeg. You have Nashville. Dallas is on the up. Colorado's on the up. They could win the division next year for all we know. Chicago, they have the 3rd overall pick. They have a couple prospects coming up in the system. If they have a number 1 goalie, they could be a playoff team as well. I don't think Minnesota's there quite yet. And I don't blame Phil Kessel for using his no trade clause. He earned that right. He's allowed to use, his power to veto a trade. And from Pittsburgh's side of it, it made no sense to me, because I don't understand how trading a consistent 80-point guy. Phil Kessel is one of the most durable players in the year and one of the most dependable guys you can count on for 80 points. I don't know how trading a guy like that is going to make your team better unless you're getting an absurd amount of players, prospects, picks. It just doesn't make sense to me, honestly. You don't get better trading guys like that away. honestly. Like, well, I don't get what, like, Jason Zucker was going to make their team better than when they had Phil Kessel. Like, no, absolutely not. Phil Kessel's at that $6.8 million contract thanks to the Leafs because they retained 1.2 of the $8 million. But that's a desirable contract. And I know teams are talking about, like, oh, they're taking on $6.8 million. No, you're taking on $6.8 million for Phil Kessel, who's one of those durable players in the league. Trading Phil Kessel is not going to solve any of your problems. It's going to make your problems worse. Just because your team got swept does not mean you have to go and make these drastic changes that are completely unnecessary. Your team just did not have a good 4 games against Pittsburgh, or against the New York Islanders. And if you're Pittsburgh, you got to look at, you know, the way you ended the season. You ended pretty strong. You know, Pittsburgh lacked some depth. They lack depth. And I think their stars just look kind of burnt out by the end of it. But trading away Phil Kessel is not going to solve any of your problems. You cannot get better by trading Phil Kessel. And I think I'm glad that, you know, I love Sidney Crosby, and I'm glad that he kind of gets to keep Phil Kessel on that team. I feel like that still keeps them in their competitive, you know, that competitive side for the next couple of years. Moving on, there are now talks about the Anaheim Ducks looking to move or buy out Corey Perry. Now, this kind of came as a surprise to me. Corey Perry is getting up there in age, 33, 34 years old. He's no longer in his early 30s. He's sort of creeping in that mid-30s area. Now, a buyout, I sort of understand why Anaheim would want to buy him out, but however, there's only 2 years left of his contract, and the Anaheim Ducks are looking to get younger. They can afford Corey Perry. I don't see all that value in buying him out. If there's a trade partner that would want to take on the $8.625 million, go for it. However, I don't see that being a realistic option, especially at this point. You know, teams kind of want to evaluate all areas of the roster, and they want to have as much cap space as they can going to the draft and free agency to make moves and be flexible. If a Corey Perry move does happen, I expect it to happen sometime in the summer after teams kind of, got their needs to the draft. They drafted, you know, players a position that they were looking for, and they signed guys in free agency that address needs in the roster on the depth chart. I see a move like that happening maybe in the summer, but I think there's more value in keeping Corey Perry, at least as a veteran presence for your young guys. I know that's kind of a hoax. People don't, you know, like that all that much. Oh, it's a veteran presence. It's BS. Honestly, there's an element to it that I think is very true. You've seen it in the past with guys like Shane Doan and Patrick Marleau, how they do really help the young guys on their teams. And I think Corey Perry with the young guys like Max Jones, Sam Steele, Daniel Sprong, Maxime Comtois might come in. Jacob Larson on the back end is, you know, looking like he'll crack the lineup this year. There's a lot of young guys on the team, and I think Corey Perry could help out in that way. And honestly, like, unless they were able to get a decent trade for Corey Perry and get some sort of value back in return and get shedding the contract, I don't see anything that's going to work, at least as of right now. I think they should just keep it. It's only 2 more years. If it was a longer term deal, I think you maybe consider something, but you don't want to have to worry about that contract 3-4 years down the line. Just wait it out the last 2 years. If he gets hurt again, you can put him on LTIR and have the cap space. So yeah. Next, as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, I am very pleased and sort of sad at the same time because I love him. But Patrick Marleau is heading out of town from the looks of it. Now, I think Marleau was great for the Leafs. Now, the one thing that I did not like about the Marleau signing, I said it from the start. You can ask people that I know. I said that third year is going to bite the Leafs in the butt when they have to pay all these guys. And this was before they signed John Tavares to 7 years, $11 million per season, $77 million total. It's just crazy. Like all this cap money just flying around left, right, and center. Marleau was great for the first year. The second year, he kind of, you know, tailed off a bit. And I think if they could find a suitor for Marleau at the 6.25, we're looking at California, we're looking at Arizona. I think the Coyotes are the most realistic option for a trade for Marleau. Now, I'm fine giving a draft pick. Obviously not like first round picks. But, you know, I consider getting rid of a draft pick. Another, you know, prospect in the system, maybe like a mid-level prospect to get rid of the Marleau contract. It pays to get rid of Marleau if you want to keep Johnsson and Kapanen on the roster. I think it is totally dumb to potentially lose Johnsson or Kapanen because you want to keep Marleau for 1 more year. If Marleau wants to head out of town and he's selling his house and, you know, there's talks of him moving to another team out west, I think you got to look at that. And I think if you're a Leafs fan, you got to be somewhat excited at the possibility of potentially keeping all these forwards. I know everyone's like talking about, oh, Nylander's gone, Johnsson's gone, Kapanen's gone. Well, you know what? Now they might be able to keep all these guys. And moving along, Nikita Zaitsev also looks like, you know, he's heading his way out of town also. That $4.5 million contract for another 5 years. It's just great. Thank you so much, Lou Lamoriello, for that amazing contract you left for Dubas and the boys. But again, Zaitsev has requested a trade, so it looks like Dubas is going to be working the phones to try and move him out. I want to see at the draft if there's anything the Leafs can do if they traded a draft pick of some sort to shed salary. Now I know with Corey Perry, teams aren't going to be wanting to do that at the draft, but Zaitsev's at a $4.5 million cap, and he's making twice as less as Corey Perry is. Zaitsev at 4.5. I think it's a much more realistic contract to move. Zaitsev also can be a serviceable player. I think Corey Perry's kind of tailing off a bit with the injuries and all that. Zaitsev can still be a solid defenseman if a team uses him right. I think Zaitsev in a defensive system can do fairly well, in my opinion. I don't think he never worked in this Leafs offense. He was never defensive enough, or really offensive enough either. I know teams talked about Zaitsev having his 36-point season. Well, a lot of his points came off feeding Mitch Marner on the power play when Marner went and, dipsy-doo, did a bunch of stuff. So, overall, I'm really pumped about that. And, and I'm also really excited about the draft. There's a lot of rumors about teams moving up and down. As of right now, no trades are imminent, but I do expect some movement, before the draft a little bit now and then. We see a little bit before the draft, and then maybe during the draft you might see a couple trades in the first round, but I'm very excited for that, and stay tuned for some more videos, guys. Thank you very much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Please click that like button, click subscribe if you want to see more content, and this is On the Pond.